Tom Lavecchia here, and I am back in an acting capacity for Jason Venturelli. Jason, his beautiful wife, Robin, she's about to give birth this week, so I'm covering today. It's weird to say New Theory Podcast. I typically say the Armchair MBA. So those who haven't heard me, check out my other podcast, the Armchair MBA, and got a great guest today, John Filoni. Let me do a nice little introduction for this gentleman, Boston guy. He's the author of Seven Covenant Principles, Your Key to Great Relationships. John Filoni, welcome to the New Theory Podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Well, so the thing is, we're in a different time, right? Where relationships, although we have easier connectivity, the relationships tend not to be as strong for many reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of reasons and nature of relationships, sometimes money is a focal point. Sometimes it's not, right? People always think it's always about the money. It's always about the money. But when your book, you kind of say it's a little different. Kind of walk us through what you think is kind of the fulcrum or the focus point on many meaningful relationships.
Yeah, and the book is the Covenant Secret, and it's about covenants that we have with people. But when you discuss with business people, is it people? Is it money? Is it money? Is it people? And even if you are a person that picks money, a truth is you only get money through people. So there's no other way to get money. So you can say money all day long, but it's about the relationships that you have. And in the book, it talks about these 7 principles, which are universal laws. Things like gratitude, integrity, the golden rule. It's rather timely because I wrote this book about 30 years ago, and I self-published it as an ebook. And without advertising, there were over 40,000 copies out there. But then it got
you sold 40,000 versions. Time out. You self-published.
Yes.
And you sold 40,000 copies.
It was a free ebook, no advertising. I have no clue how I got 40,000 plus copies. I have no clue. So don't ask me how. Yeah. And it got great reviews and a lot of good comments. But the timeliness of it and why I wanted it out there in a hard in hard form is the buzzword in corporate America today is stakeholder capitalism, right?
Yeah.
It used to be that the shareholder was paramount and everything in the company was for the sake of the shareholder.
The principal agent problem.
Yeah. And with stakeholder capitalism, you have different stakeholders, and each one of those stakeholders that they talk about now was a chapter of my book that I wrote 30 years ago. Yeah. It's your employees, your customers, your partners, your vendors, your shareholders, your owners, the community you serve, the planet you live on, and all of the things that we can do. And again, all of those stakeholders are people, and there are universal laws and universal principles on how to build good relationships, and I tap in those within the book, The Covenant Secret.
Well, so here's the thing. I'm with you on that, right? And these are kind of core principles and core beliefs. So I remember I was when I was still in corporate, we were all sales reps at the time, and we're all making between a channel of 150 to 450, and we were, hungry salespeople. And the CEO said, do me a favor, raise your hand if money really makes you happy. Like, not just does it supply you, but the money itself, getting the money doesn't make you happy. And literally on 3 or 4 people out of 150 reps raise their hand. Why? Because it wasn't just about the money. It was about winning, being the top of your field. It was about the camaraderie. It was about the relationships. And I do subscribe to that. One challenge I have, though, John, is with kind of like the gig economy, with technology, it seems business is getting more transactional. Now, tell me, where do you agree with that, and where do you disagree where some of the covenants will always hold true?
Yeah, well, they will always hold true because no matter what, we're talking with people, and I think regarding the technology and the connectivity of the world, and you've got lots of thin relationships. And the key is, how do you get deeper in them, and how do you get closer? How do you learn more about human beings? one of the reasons that I wrote this book years ago was, my involvement on Wall Street and running businesses and so forth. I saw a lot of lip service where people business would say that people are their greatest asset, and yet none of their policies would. Exactly. And I saw that the policies in corporate America were always based upon the lowest common denominator of human behavior, right? So they're always expecting the worst. And no matter what company that I went into, started, or ran, I would put in policies like unlimited sick days, unlimited vacation days, and all of these things where you trust people. And interestingly enough, and it's a fact, and it's proven in Silicon Valley, that when you trust people like that, people don't take sick days off. They don't you got to force them to take a vacation.
Correct.
And it was all about my viewpoint of we treat people like children rather than respecting and trusting human beings and having them fulfill our trust.
Yeah. So I like the people-centric approach. Now, when I said earlier about how things kind of became transactional, if you look at like Gen Z and millennials, they take a different approach to work, which is interesting. On one end, they're not going to die in the corporate cemetery. They're not going to get the 15-year watch, and that's okay, right? But they do like their short-term contracts, and it needs to be more meaningful. I remember we were hiring for an intern position. And they asked us, I don't respectfully, we're a very small organization, flat organization, but I don't hire the interns, nor do I talk to them or interact much unless they directly work with me. And some of the interns demanded to speak to me and wanted to know kind of like my personal philosophy on things. And I was like taken aback, but then wait a second, people no longer just want to work for somebody, but they want to subscribe to their belief system. And right or wrong, right? And it's no longer enough to just get the paycheck or no longer to have that employment contract. It's really about, hey, do you believe in this cause or are you against that cause? And all that stuff comes into play. In your book, how do you kind of reconcile that with, again, the covenant, right, of having these meaningful relationships and then also being people-centric, right? But also they're not going to be here 30 years. So I want to see how you kind of reconcile that as an author and leader.
Yeah, everybody, especially Gen Z and millennials, they want to have impact in the world in which they live, right?
Correct.
I'll never forget. Oh God, I don't know how many years ago when Shaun White, the snowboarder, won his gold medals, and he was on the cover of Fast Company magazine. And coming back and winning after his gold medals, he was asked, "You've been offered 20 endorsements from 20 different companies, but you've only picked 3, one of them being Red Bull, which was a big one of his." And he looked at them with like they had 10 heads. And his answer was, I use those products. In our days, you can give this glass to Michael Jordan, pay him $1 million and say it's the best glass ever made. Kids today, the millennials, Gen Z, they really are about authenticity and realness. And it's a covenant that it's an unspoken one. And the way I define that covenant is in business, there's the differences between a client and a customer, right? A customer can be handled by a clerk in a store. Okay. Yeah. Anybody can handle a customer. It's a very shallow relationship. However, only a professional can handle a client. A professional would never allow a client to be handled by a clerk. And the reason is there's a covenant between a professional and a client. And that covenant is really simple. Anything that I counsel you on, I'm considering you before me. It has nothing to do with me. And it's that true service in your self-interest. And that's one of the things that builds that covenant relationship. And I'll never forget, I was in my late teens, and my father's best friend was dying of cancer. So I went and visited him in the hospital. And he literally had only a couple of weeks to live. And I had known him my whole life. He was my father's best friend, and I'm probably 18 or 19. Yeah. And as I was about to leave the room, this would be the last time I saw him. He said to me 5 words, which were the most powerful 5 words I've ever heard. He said, "John, it was nice knowing you."
Wow.
Now think about that. Here's a man on his dying bed taking his last breath. In 2 weeks, he was dead, telling me that knowing me enriched his life. It was good. It was nice. And that impacted me so powerfully, because imagine if every human being in our lives could have that viewpoint of us, is it was nice knowing you.
Yeah.
Now, and there's a lot in that word knowing. That's knowing our dreams. It's knowing our weaknesses. It's
Correct.
Knowing you.
Yeah, really knowing you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, okay, so there's 7, but what is the covenant secret? If you had to pick one, what's the secret sauce? What's the, let's take somebody who is a W-2 employee watching this. They make 60 grand a year. They want to enrich your life. They want to enrich your personal relationships. They want to enrich your business relationships. But and they're an entrepreneur or just or a staffer, right? But they want to have deep and meaningful relationships. If they're going to watch the next 3 minutes of this, what would you say?
Yeah, so I go through the 7 principles, which I will really quickly, which lead to the covenant secret. And that covenant secret I won't reveal.
Kind of more of an ingredient.
Yeah, you have to go that way. I mean, the first one is living by the golden rule, right? And treating others like we would we would like to be treated, doing to others that the way we would like to be done too, and not doing things that we won't. But the interesting thing about the golden rule is the responsibility is on us. It doesn't say to treat people the way we would like to, and they have to respond a certain way, right? It has to be, period. And it's all, the onus is on us. So treat people with that. The second principle is about showing gratitude. And it's a universal law that which we show gratitude and that which we pay attention to expands, right? So Meister Eckhart, the great mystic, said, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Plato said a grateful mind is a great mind, which eventually attracts itself to great things. Within that act of showing gratitude and paying attention to the things we're thankful for, all that stuff grows in our lives. So that's important.
Hold on. If you didn't hear of him, it's okay. Have you ever heard of David Meltzer by chance? And if you haven't, it's okay.
No.
David Meltzer was Lee Steinberg, the inspiration for what was that movie with Tom Cruise? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
And he was the CEO of that company. So what happened was he made $100 million. He lost $100 million, and then he made good some of it back. And what he talks about now is kind of vibration and energy, but the core of it is being humble, is possessing gratitude. And not that I'm very gracious for everything I have. I feel like I'm not there yet to kind of look back and downward. But what I'm kind of hearing from you and what I heard from him is no, every step of the way, be grateful. And
even for the littlest things,
Yeah.
That expands, it grows. Gratitude is really everything. And so the next one would be, if you really want to serve people optimally, find out what they value. Because each different stakeholder has different values of things. Another thing, I was in Puerto Rico one time with my wife, and we were I think it was our honeymoon. Maybe it wasn't, but we were in Puerto Rico, and coming off the ship, we went through all the stores, and there was this medal that I wanted to buy, and it cost like $2,200. And I was willing to pay for it at the time, but we had just got off the ship. So gotten off the ship. So I said, I'll come back. Well, I saw the exact same medal in Puerto Rico, everywhere from $400 to $3,000. I had no sense of value to it. Yeah. I wouldn't pay $100 at that point. Yeah. So it's important to find out the value of things in each individual, even as an employer, to sit with our employees and to discuss, find out what they value in life and serve them, serve customers the same way, serve any one of our constituencies by first finding out what they value.
That's a good point. What else?
Honesty. Honesty builds trust. Trustworthiness is the foundation of character, and character determines the fruit and pleasures of a relationship. So trust and integrity are critical in any relationship. I was, when I was a young stockbroker, I went and worked with this personal coach down in Texas who worked with high-powered brokers, and you're there for 3 days, and it was like $3,000 in 1983. It was a lot of money, and he he first goes over the he gets a dictionary, and you look up the word honesty, and you go through everything about honesty, and you then swear to him that you are totally honest over the next 3 days with him, and if you're not, just go home now, because this isn't going to work. So you really agree, you make that covenant of honesty between each other. Then he asked one question, which was the most strangest question, most powerful question I ever heard. He says, "What is it about yourself you don't want me to know?"
Oh, shit.
Can you imagine swearing honesty to someone, and then, what is it about yourself you don't want me to know? How powerful is that, right? To really dig into a human being and learn.
Yep. It was one of the similar ones where there's a group of people, 50 people, and Google was still kind of coming out, and everybody wrote like a little note, and for everybody, like, you asked everybody, hey, did anybody here cheat on their spouse? And out of 50 people, maybe like, one person, raised their hand, right? And then he goes, hey, by the way, did anybody raise it? Then he could write it down, crumple it up anonymously, and out of the 50, it was like 20 or whatever, right? But then he goes, by the way, I actually have all your Google searches, and he pulled a big envelope. I'm a hacker. I have all your Google searches, and I know exactly who did. You guys have two options. Option one is I open them up, and it'll match 20. Great, we're good. But if it doesn't, I get to read the names. Either that, and each of you will get like $10,000 each, or we just dead it. Who wants to dead it? Everybody raised their hand. So it's like, so it's like, yeah. So it's
what they value.
yeah, agreed. And it's kind of like, maybe they value their discretion, I guess. I just always kind of jumped out at me. All right, so let's round out these covenants, because I'm interested to hear.
All right, so 6 is passion plus compassion moves mountains. Okay. It's the Joseph Campbell follow your bliss kind of thing. And you really, I give an example of this being, I would say that Mother Teresa, and this knocks people on their butts, but I say Mother Teresa was a very selfish human being. And they say, what do you mean by that? Well, Mother Teresa, how can you say that? This woman suffered from morning till night with the poor, and her whole life was about suffering. I said, but isn't it interesting, though? What she said was, the more she suffered, the closer she felt to Christ.
Oh, wow.
That's selfish in a good way. It's not the negative connotation of selfish, right? It's the virtue of selfishness, if you will. But how fascinating is that? So we have to find our passion, what drives us, and if you want to be a good manager, sit down. I trained stockbrokers when I was younger in management, and I had the best pool of rookie brokers in EF Hutton in the region, and I was asked to speak about what's my secret. I said, it's really not that complex. What I would do is every morning. And I would take one of my brokers for lunch, for breakfast, and in the afternoon I'd take another broker for lunch, and we'd sit and we talk about their dreams, talk about their passions, talk about what their needs are, what they want to accomplish, what resources they'd have. And I go back to the office and I give it to them. Yeah. And it was really no big deal. But it's their finding out, and it's that covenant of finding out what people care about, what they value, what they're passionate about, and living your life with passion and compassion. So the 7th principle is to really look at your beliefs, and it's a process. What you believe determines what you think. What you think determines how you decide. How you decide determines the actions you take, which then gives results. Now, if you don't get the results you want, most people start at, well, I made a wrong decision. I took the wrong action, and they stay in that area. But if you really want to change your life, go back to your beliefs. Because if you look at your beliefs and what you believe, you don't have to change anything, because your thoughts and your decisions and actions all become their core. You don't have to even think about it or discipline yourself. So it's looking at an inventory of your beliefs and making sure they serve you.
I mean, again, if what was it, Tony Robbins, if you kind of work within your belief window and then function there, and always know your truth, you'll always win, right? A lot of times you listen to people when they make mistakes or things go bad. It's something generally out of their character or something they normally don't do, or they got into something it always starts with, oh, I shouldn't have did it, but, right? So my point being is, if you live kind of truly within your belief window, you're honest with yourself, you build that trust. I love the passion plus compassion. I think that's amazing. And listen, a lot to download in 21 minutes and 11 seconds, John. This is, I mean, I covered last minute. Jason's having the baby. I'm back over the New Theory podcast. Kind of good to be back in the saddle here. John, how can we find you and how can we find the book? I'm going to put links below, but for those on audio, how can we find you and how can we find the book?
Yeah, the book is The Covenant Secret. It's on Amazon. I have my website, johnfaloni.com. And I'm launching an app, an investment app.
That I can't wait. That is just give us some notice before launch, and we'd love to.
We'll come back and talk about it.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much about it, but if it's half as good as I think it is, you'll get a stakeholder and possibly, when it gets public, an investor here. So
sounds good,
stuff, John. And I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you've been flexible in your time, and we really appreciate that. We're just two guys having kids, so appreciate that flexibility. Check out John Faloni, Covenant Secrets. We're going to put the links below if you're watching on YouTube. We're going to put the links on iTunes. And John, thank you for being on the New Theory podcast.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Nice meeting you.